So thank you and welcome to another one of our virtual press conferences. I've explained earlier why we need to do this, and so many of you, although it is uncomfortable for the media, would understand the necessity of ensuring that we play our part in the fight against COVID-19. So I've scanned some of the questions that came in to, to the numbers that we gave and to my Facebook page prior to coming here, and I'm just looking at many of those questions. And quite a few of them relate to what happened yesterday at GCOM. And therefore, I want to start off with that issue. As you witnessed, the Secretariat headed by Mr. Lowenfield submitted a proposal to do the recount of the votes for the general and regional elections in 2020. And that proposal was to have this process be completed in 156 days. Now, clearly, there is a serious miscalculation on the part of APNU and the coup enablers, because what we are witnessing is a coup d'etat or a process of stealing the elections taking place before our very eyes. And as we recognize, they have a few key players in this coup d'etat. Some from APNU and AFC, and some of them within GCOM itself, both at the level of the Commission and the level of the Secretariat. So yesterday, that proposal was just another element in the entire plot to ensure that this coup d'etat succeeds. Now, they know that no observer team will stay here for 156 days. They know that people will probably get tired by the time you reach 156 days to complete the process. Thirdly, along the way, they will use either lawyers or others to frustrate the process, contaminate the process. And all in this entire period, APNU will remain in office illegally and exercise the powers of government illegally. And they're hoping by being there in a de facto way, they will avoid, by claiming that their process of recount is going on, that they would avoid the sanctions and claim that they're still legally there. So this is the game plan. Well, we made it clear yesterday, and we're doing so now again, that we will never accept any of these elements coming from GCOM or anywhere else to delay the announcement of the legitimate, credible results for the elections. We know that those results will go in favor of the People's Progressive Party because APNU has not shown through any evidence, which we have done, that they have won the elections. We uploaded all of our statements of poll for Region 4, and it showed that the PPP is in a handsome lead in the overall results of the 2020 elections. A lead that would see us have several seats more than APNU and AFC in the parliament. So let me take you for a moment through the how ridiculous this proposal was by Lowenfield. And you will note, those of you who have seen the proposal, how closely it mirrors that of Mr. Vincent Alexander of APNU. So in our laws in Guyana, it takes 3 months to prepare for elections. Mr. Lowenfield himself had been on record in the past saying, if I get the word when we were preparing for elections, if I get the word from the chair of GCOM, in 3 months I can be ready to conduct the elections. So imagine it will take 3 months to prepare for an entire elections, but 156 days to do the recount of the votes. Then in another section of the law, which says that the results have to be declared within the overall results 15 days. That provides for the votes to be counted, which is done on the night of the elections, within 2 hours of the close of poll in all the boxes across the country, or 99.9% of the boxes. The process is completed, the statement of poll is prepared, and the results declared for all of the entire country in each of the boxes. Then the law provides for a recount to take place within those 15 days. And if people are dissatisfied with the recount, there is a recourse to have another count again. So you can have the counting of all the ballots, the recount, and another count, all to be completed in 15 days. But in this case, we need 156 days to do the recount. So it is very, very transparent what the proposal was all about. The proposal was part of the plan to steal the elections. Now, Mr. Lowenfield will not release the copies of the statements of poll that he received from the ROs, the original copies of the statements of poll. He refuses to do that until now. That in itself could help significantly to verify the results of the elections, because we have uploaded all of our statements of poll. And should he do the same or present these to the commissioners, the country can see if there are differences, and then see whether the SOPs, the original SOPs, were tampered with by either of the parties. Now it's instructive that APNU has not, although they have all of them, have not uploaded a single one for Region 4, nor would Lowenfield produce them to the commissioners or the commission. In fact, he should do this. This is part of the CO's responsibility, but he has not done so. But yet Mr. Lowenfield comes up with a proposal to almost do an audit lasting 156 days of these boxes. So I do not want to belabor the point, because I think most people in Guyana would see it for what it is. Lowenfield and the Secretariat being part of the plan to steal the elections. And therefore, we said yesterday we will not accept this. We through the commissioners, the People's Progressive Party, through the 3 commissioners representing the opposition, presented a proposal today to GCOM, and I'm going to speak about key elements of that proposal. The first is that this exercise can be completed within 10 days, maximum 2 weeks. For all they have to do is to increase the number of workstations from 3 to 20, and that they can have limited numbers of people there at their workstation. the numbers being limited to a representative from each political party and each observer group, 2 staff of GCOM in each workstation, and that they televise or live stream the proceedings of the recount. This would ensure maximum transparency and will respond to the COVID-19 guidelines. So, and they can do 20 of these stations separately, each with a limited number of people. The exercise can be completed within 2 weeks. We have put up as part of our proposal a separate workstation to do the tabulation of the votes following the Chief Justice's orders. That is that since the tabulation was the problem in Region 4, where Mingo made these false declarations, we also want that dealt with separately and transparently, and that's part of our proposal. So the reason for wanting this to be televised and to have either the Auditor General present in the room or a reputable accounting firm is to prevent what happened with the results of Region 4, where Mingo, in the presence and enabled by APNU members, APNU AFC members, and some commissioners, made these fraudulent declarations blatantly. And to prevent a repeat of this at the recount stage, we believe that having the observers back there and the representatives of the political parties, plus televising or live streaming it, and with the presence of the Auditor General or an audit firm there, that this will ensure maximum transparency so that the recount could be done properly. We, in a nutshell, this is what our proposal is all about. I will release the proposal so that people can study it. You will see it is a reasonable proposal, and it could be implemented immediately. Now, many of the staff of GCOM, we are arguing that the compromised staff of GCOM must not be part of this process. And there are about 4 or 5 persons we have identified. And Mr. Lowenfield has proven that he's part of the problem. That's because of his actions that he knew of the plot, and he is an active part of this plot to undermine legitimate results being announced at GCOM. So we would not like these people to be present because they will undermine the recount as they undermined the process of declaration, the results for Region 4. So this proposal would be made public so that people could see how reasonable they are. Now, you again, Mr. Alexander was saying they now need an audit. Imagine the same people who did not want a recount. They went to court several times to block the recount. They went to court to block the agreement between Mr. Granger and I for a total recount across Ghana. Now they don't want a recount anymore. They want an audit of the boxes. So we see this as part of the plot to delay the elections. They know an audit of the boxes will take much longer period. In fact, it would be a protracted delay. The law makes it clear how recounts must be conducted, and we propose to follow the law, how the recounts must be conducted, not the protracted, time-consuming arrangement that Mr. Alexander now conveniently hangs on to because he is part of this plan to have the results being delayed or the legitimate results being announced. Secondly, Now I see them hanging on to the recount for all 10 regions. You would recall that only in Region 4 that there was a dispute, and that it was a subject of a court matter, and the Chief Justice ruled several times. At one time, she vacated the results that were fraudulently announced by Mr. Mingo, and then made an order as to the process that he had to follow to go through or to come to the results. That is the tabulation process. He then ignored that again. The chair gave a commitment in relation to Region 4. So now Mr. Alexander and the entire APNU cabal, look at their press conferences or their press releases. They're latching on to the recount for all 10 regions. But imagine, these are the very same people who went to court to block the agreement between Mr. Granger and I, which was the origin. That agreement was the first agreement that spoke of a national recount. And how that came about is that in our discussions on the night with CARICOM, I said that one of the ways of moving forward is to have the recount done of Region 4 ballots. And Mr. Granger said that he had concerns about other regions. So I pointed out at that meeting that the statutory period for requesting a recount had been passed. But if he had concerns about the regions, other regions, in an attempt to move forward and settle the issue definitively, we will have no objection to doing a recount in the other areas. So imagine now APNU went and challenged that agreement, the aid memoir, which was the first document that spoke of a national recount, but they are now busy prosecuting the case for a national recount at both GCOM and within across the country. So if they are so concerned, about this aid memoir, then maybe we should just go back, as the private sector pointed out, we should just go back to do the recount of Region 4, because they themselves didn't want the national recount provided for by the MOU between Mr. Granger and I. They went to court to challenge that. So maybe it's time that we put this on the table to go back to the recount only for Region 4 if they're playing hardball. We don't have a problem with doing the recount for all the regions, provided it could be done in an expeditious way. And in any case, the Commission had made a decision on the 15th of April, where they said they will start with Region 4, and this was widely reported in all the newspapers, including the Chronicle, which is the mouthpiece of APNU AFC. So we are putting in as part of our proposal too that the recount must start in Region 4, because that is the region where the contention has been and where the fraudulent results have been announced for. So I just wanted to spend some time explaining to people to situate this proposal by Lowenfield as part of the plan to pull off a coup d'etat on the country, to give space for APNU, AFC, and Granger to continue to operate like a de facto government, and they're hoping by doing so they may avoid the consequences of sanctions, and they may have a lengthy delay and people would just get tired. Well, there is no giving up on this. Let me make it clear. We're not giving up on this fight. That's one. Two, the international community has seen, they've been briefed, and they themselves are aware of this plan. The plot is transparent to every single person except to the criminal cabal in APNU and AFC, which think that they can get away with it. The international community is very much aware of this plot. And if they believe that they can achieve some normalcy, I don't know what their game plan is, this cabal. But if Granger thinks that he will be the de facto president and these imposter ministers will be de facto ministers and they will be accorded somehow with respect or authority, well, they will be every single day faced with protests and struggle until the legitimate results are announced. Somehow they believe they can avoid sanctions, and it's a delusion because many of them and their families are going to be faced with sanctions directly. So let me quickly go through a couple of other issues that have been brought to my attention. I know that a lot of people in APNU base, they are just as concerned about the protracted delay in the elections. And I wish to speak to them too, because many of them just want this over. And they voted in a particular way, but they would like to see the results, credible results announced, and the country moves forward to deal with the biggest challenges of our times, which is the COVID-19, the rebooting of our economy, and then eventually to lay out a plan for prosperity where all of our people can move forward. The country wants to move forward. What has happened is that we have this criminal cabal that believes, many of them are purporting to represent the masses, that they're speaking on behalf of APNU supporters. But they don't give a damn about the APNU supporter or the PPP supporter, or for that matter, the supporter of any other party who is struggling to make a livelihood now. This criminal cabal wants to remain in office for their own privileges and because they have a lot to hide. And many of them have their bread well buttered. They and their children are doing well. They have a ton of assets, etc. For them, it is just hanging on to political power. They don't care about the masses. So this is what we see playing out in Congress Place. They have taken this over and they are digging in. And they have enacted or resurrected their sleeper cells in many other areas, for especially GCOM, to do the nasty work for them. So imagine the imposter ministers, 3 imposter ministers, Trotman, Harman, and Cathy Hughes, going to a press conference to criticize the private sector about being stooges, and to argue that the private sector should not be speaking about free and fair elections. Now, these are 3 criminals who are trying to steal an election, trying to thwart the will of the people, and they should be even ashamed to face the media and the public. But they're going there to criticize others, private sector, the international community, and others who are fighting for decency, honesty, and free and fair elections. And the three criminals who should be ashamed to even show their faces are there to talk about, to criticize the others. This is what we have, an era of shamelessness on the part of these ministers. And imagine a press release that from the APNU AFC, which says that they continue to be confident of its victory at the poll, and like the rest of the nation looks forward to a declaration being made in that regard. They know they lost the elections. Why do you think they're hiding from the recount and trying to go to court to block the process moving forward, or getting these 156 days proposals to delay the recount? Because they've lost the elections. And yet they have this impunity. This is purely criminal behavior. We have a criminal cabal that has taken over the country. And they're doing it because of personal interest. So look at David Hines, seemingly reasonable person all along, trying to present the facade that he was fair and analytical. And when the reality of the situation hit him, a person who never spoke about power sharing before the elections or anything of that sort, and trust me, had APNU AFC won the elections, would have never spoken about that, because he'd be enjoying the perks of office, now says that forget the elections or that they took place. That what we should have in Guyana is a transitional government. So forget that these elections ever took place, and that Granger must head the transitional government with Irfan Ali as the prime minister. So Granger didn't win the elections, but he must head the transitional government. And then he says, let's destroy all the ballot boxes. Not just a criminal act because destruction of public property, but it's whistleblowing to say we have to get rid of these ballot boxes because there's evidence in those ballot boxes that we have lost the elections. This is what we're faced with now. And you see them rolling out. There's few in numbers, a few of them still hanging on to this failed narrative. They all know they lost the elections. Why do you think they are pushing for interim government, transitional government, etc.? Well, none of that will happen unless you have, first of all, the legitimate results of the election announced, and that a government is sworn in reflective of the results of the elections of March 2nd, 2020. None of that. There is no moving forward in Guyana. You can't have rogues and thieves and criminals who are trying to bully the country, and because of their own self-interest, to bully for themselves a place at the seat of power, when they have no regard for decency, honesty, rule of law, fairness, or anything of the sort. That can't happen. It has to be on the basis of legitimate results being announced and a president sworn in reflective of that result. So there are many of those. I don't want to go through a lot of the long list of these people who you see very conveniently now offering solutions to the problems. I saw the Ministry of Finance with alacrity putting out a statement that I think Mr. Roel Johnson raised the issue about payment of salaries and pensions. And the issue was a legitimate one that he raised. because these ministers now, or the imposter ministers, have been expending resources that they are not authorized to expend. And they will have to account for these because they're not legitimately there. So it is like stealing public funds or using public funds unauthorizedly. Now, I agree that we have to ensure that our public servants continue to get paid and our pensioners continue to get the resources that they should get. But expenditure outside of that should be limited. And because we can't have a situation of lawlessness. And they know, many of them know, that the government now is a de facto government. In fact, it's just waiting for proper declarations of the results so that a new government is sworn in. And therefore, for them, the ministers, the imposter ministers, to give any direction to any technical staff about expenditures, etc., would be illegal instructions on their part. I've heard things about cabinet meeting. Just imagine the impunity of this and Mr. Granger himself. By now, Granger knows he lost the elections. You either have to be totally oblivious to anything in this country or in a state where you're incapacitated to read and understand to know that he has lost the elections. From the behavior, from the condemnation of the international community to the behavior of his own people. He has not even asked for his own statements of poll. If he gets his own statements of poll for Region 4, they will prove that the PPP won the elections to Ghana. That because they will show that the numbers that were announced, the fictitious numbers that were announced by how fictitious the numbers were that were announced by Mingo. And he has not even had the curiosity or the decency to say, let's stop all of this. I gave my word to CARICOM, unless he was duping CARICOM, that I gave my word to CARICOM to have this recount done and done expeditiously so we can move forward as a country. He's abdicated all responsibility. He's disappeared from public life. He doesn't answer to any of these questions. So it's either he's not reading anything, it's filtered to him, either Congress please have him held as hostage now with this criminal cabal surrounding him, not wanting him to move forward. So the commitment that he gave to CARICOM, because Mia Motley said to me, he told her he doesn't want to be sworn in on the basis of results that are challenged. And these results are not just challenged, they're fraudulent. And there is a way of addressing this swiftly through a swift recount, or to get his own people to supply him with their SOPs, or to demand of Lowenfield the SOPs that came in, the original SOPs. And he will see that they match exactly those copies that were given to the PPP that we posted. He could resolve it all, but either the criminal cabal has taken him over totally or he's part of it. And this is the person who campaigned on the basis of legitimacy and decency, etc. So I wanted just on that matter to ensure that people understand our position. We are not accepting these elements or these plans, or we're not naive to think that people like Lowenfield and the Secretariat staff will have a change of heart. We are very much aware that they were part of this plan to stage the coup d'etat. We don't believe that this criminal cabal that is in APNU and that you see making public statements or going to press conferences, that they will give up a lot or early because they're part of the perks machinery that they have grown accustomed to for 5 years. We're not fooled that they are doing this on behalf of Afro-Guyanese or APNU supporters because they have absolutely no concern for the welfare of their supporters. Had they had any concern for the welfare of the supporters, they would have allowed the process to work. We know that there are limited tools available now because of the COVID-19 pandemic to stage protests and all of that. We will never do that because we don't want to contaminate people. And we are aware that it's only through two sets of actions: strong international pressure, and that this criminal cabal would comply. So we have been briefing the international community about the elements of this coup. We have identified individuals and their families who we believe are part of the plot, the families who benefited from this, for individual consequences, because that's the only way we believe that some of these people will learn that you can't steal an election in the modern day and age in front of the entire world. We are also working to make sure that the struggle and the vigilance exercised by civil society and all of the other parties, the smaller political parties, and many individuals who believe in democracy, that vigilance is kept up. Thirdly, we've made it clear that we will not allow a coup to succeed, even if they succeed to swear in an illegal president. Then immediately the consequences would flow to Guyana. They would not be able to manage. We made it clear. In fact, the international community has made this clear, that the resources available and everything else will be shut down and there'll be individual consequences. But we will treat them as pariahs in Guyana too. If Granger thinks he can go to functions, etc., and act like in the past when they were legally or elected, when they were properly elected, where the respect we accorded, that all of that will be gone. So we are in this for the long haul. If they think they can wear us out, and they will not succeed. And right now, this cabal has been incompetent even in the best of days. They cannot address the consequences of the COVID-19 for Guyana. They can't address any other consequence, but particularly this one, which requires a competent government to restore the economy and jobs to people and well-being. Now look at the mess they have made so far of almost everything. How they treat quarantining of people. I hear horror stories all the time about the individuals who sought help from the hotline, how they're treated in the quarantine, the incompetence of many of the politician type, because they crowd out the medical, technical people from moving the issue forward. Imagine, Valda Lawrence, the results of your test had to go to this imposter minister, Valda Lawrence. For what? I don't know. She has no medical knowledge and she's very incompetent. And to go to her, and then they decide sometimes where to quarantine you, etc. They made a mess of everything. The hampers, now I gather they're doing hampers, but even in the doing of the hampers for communities, they're stealing a lot of the money in the procurement, and they're doing it selectively. These measures require a national response. There is no APNU PPP supporter now when you're talking about COVID-19 infection, all of our people and all of our communities have to receive help from the government or from the authorities so that we can get ahead of the curve in this pandemic and avoid the dire consequences that can come our way. So this requires a national response. The thousands of jobs have been lost. I've been doing in the last few days a survey of the economy to see what we'll have to do and the measures that we'll have to put in place to reboot the economy and to ensure that we find all of those people who have lost jobs, we find them jobs, that they can go back to work, to help those businesses that are closing their doors or becoming bankrupt, to help them to reopen their doors and to go back to viability, prosperity. All of these measures we're considering. You know that our President-elect, Mr. Irfan Ali, Dr. Irfan Ali, has been leading a major effort, a voluntary effort, because we don't have state funds to assist people in many areas, as well as to supply people with masks. And this is a voluntary effort, and they have so far, working with others, many civic-minded persons and civil society organizations have been working with his team and others to supply thousands of masks to many people who are out there, and I would urge them to continue to wear these masks. And of course, most importantly, what you need is a legal government in place to mobilize international resources to restore viability in the economy and to address this pandemic. And right now, we have a de facto government that wants to be sworn in on the basis of illegal, illegitimate results. They know they lost the elections, but they're just hanging on. This is large-scale thievery at the level of this corrupt cabal. And it's a tiny group of them who are holding this country hostage. And they're not doing it on your behalf. They're only using concerns about you now as their big, as the big selling point for them hanging on illegally to power. So I would now check to see if we have additional activities here. I've been asked also about what the PPP will do in case GCOM doesn't agree to this proposal. And a lot rests with the chair. The chair of GCOM is in a critical position now. Her credibility is at stake, and the stability and the welfare and the well-being of Guyana is part of her responsibility now. And by now, I'm sure she must be aware, if she reads the newspapers or listen to the news or look at the statements coming out of the entire international community, not just Western countries, but the Commonwealth and CARICOM, etc. I saw Prime Minister Rowley making a very clear statement about how they see this process evolving in Guyana and how disturbed CARICOM is by it. And so if the chair is seized with a sense of urgency, and given that the courts have cleared the way for a recount, she must not allow the APNU enablers and the coup plotters within the Secretariat or some members of the Commission to succeed in this plan, because she could rule in a way or vote on the side that ensures maximum transparency in the recount and to ensure that there are enough measures to keep those staff away who were part of the contamination of the process, the original process, far away from the recount. And she has all the tools available based on the laws of Guyana, and the Constitution of Guyana gives GCOM that authority. So the role of the chair in this regard is critical. And therefore, we hope that she would do the right thing. So much is at stake here. And that was one of the key questions that came up, because a lot of people are concerned about that the chair is not moving the process forward swiftly. And so that is my view in relation to that matter. I don't know if there are other questions here. Have been logged out. So I should end here, because I've been logged out of it, unless you can get it done quickly. So we are yet to see a 2019 Bank of Ghana report for the year ending 2020, or the stats bulletin from finance for the last quarter. Given the government spending during the campaign, do you think that the Bank of Ghana overdraft has reached 100 billion? What is the reserve at? So what I gather, the reserve is somewhere near $500 million now. A lot of the economy right now is underperforming. The tourism sector has practically collapsed. All the hotels are closed. The airline industry has ground to a halt. And this is having a ripple effect through the rest of the economy. So in trying to find out, our exports are sporadic now, and the inflow of resources from exports as well as remittances, etc., have all been diminished. Now, the reason we are not seeing a major rundown of the reserves immediately, but this will happen once you resume activities, is because most people now are not importing new goods. So the demand for currency for transactional purposes has also fallen steeply because of this issue. So if the stores are closed most of the time, people can't move their goods. There's no order for replenishment. Therefore, that will affect not just reserves, but future revenue streams for the country. That is one issue. And then since the price of oil fell so precipitously globally, this has reduced the demand for foreign currency to import oil. And that is also have a positive impact on the numbers, the balance of payment. But these things will change rapidly. And therefore, that is why I said to you that I'm paying close attention to what is going on in the economy. Now, the overdraft of about $100 billion has been, that is where it has been. It's part of the government borrowing from the banking system and through the central bank. And it was part of the criticism of the government that we waged in the last several years, that it is part of their borrowing policy. So they were not just running down the reserves and selling out the gold, but they were also enhanced borrowing or a higher level of borrowing internationally from international sources as well as domestic borrowing. So I don't know the exact level of the overdraft facility now, but if revenue is underperforming, then I suspect if there is no matching cut in the expenditure, and I assume that there has to be that because there is no, there's just a de facto government with no minister as far as I'm concerned, then you will see an increase in the overdraft on if that is not happening. That is, there is a matching cut in the recurrent expenditure and capital expenditure. I don't know if they're proceeding with many of the illegal contracts that were awarded in December. There are a large number of contracts, and some in January of this year, even after the budget had been closed. So if they're proceeding with those, then you will have massive unauthorized expenditure on particularly on local projects that will affect the borrowing policy and could lead to an overdraft at the central bank. But all of these things we will have to examine carefully to see that this government just operates in a very haphazard way. And so we have to examine all of these things once we have more access to information, once a legitimate government is sworn in. Now, if you have the sanctions, that will significantly affect the BOP. That could lead to a collapse of the exchange rate, which means higher inflation and economic turmoil. So that is at the level, the systemic level, the level of the economy. But what we want immediately are more personal sanctions against against minister or the imposter ministers and the coup plotters and the president himself. Ban on travel, on their assets abroad, seizure of their assets and their families' assets abroad, families who reside abroad to face the consequences of the sanctions too, like it has happened in many other parts of the world. So that is one of the questions that came about the economy. But I just want to say that our focus, we can't get all the details now because there, as you correctly pointed out, the BOG report has not come out, nor the stats bulletin. So it is a lot of what I've been doing is like an anecdotal survey, talking to people in the mining sector and in other sectors to just find out how things are going. The PPP call on the U.S. and other countries and organizations to place individual sanctions on key players in the administration, as well as GCOM. So this has been in the public domain. I think all the small political parties wrote the international community to that effect. We have done so too. And I think when you get the Secretary of State of the United States of America promising that there will be serious consequences for individuals who think they can benefit from illegal elections, then that is one of the highest levels in the US government. And I saw also the UK government, the foreign secretary, who is now the acting prime minister in the UK, made a similar statement. Then clearly this issue is high on the agenda of the international community. So, but we will keep making this point, and it would be good for individuals to write letters, etc., to that effect, because I see the letter columns have now the same old worn-out faces who have been trying to make excuses for APNU once again. So the people of this country, the decent people, need to write to the newspapers and to the international community to point out the attempts of this the de facto administration to stage the coup in Guyana. They are about what the party is doing to help with the COVID-19. As I said before, we have, through our presidential candidate and president-elect, been leading an initiative to share out masks, and a lot of our activists and others are working across the country through voluntary effort to gather material and to sew these masks and to distribute them. They've been distributed broadly. But right now what we need is more, as I said at the last press conference, a concerted effort on the part and a cogent effort on the part of the de facto administration to address this issue, not this haphazard effort or to have a Nagamoto, one of the most incompetent persons to lead any effort of this nature. That will protect public servants and essential people who are doing essential services, and that would ensure people have food in their home, and they can when, if they have fears about the disease, they don't have to, or the pandemic, or being infected, that they can get impartial advice, and they don't have to worry about their test going to the minister, or when, if they are quarantined, they're quarantined in an humane environment, and they get the best care, and that healthcare workers can go to work feeling safe, particularly healthcare workers. These are all things that are badly needed. But this government doesn't project any confidence. All it projects is a desperation to hang on to power by stealing the elections. These are some of the questions coming through. Quite a few others here, a long list of questions, but please release a link for donation purposes. I will ask Gail Teixeira and the others who've been part of this effort headed by Dr. Ali to see how they can engage more of the public in this voluntary effort to address this issue across our country. And as we made it clear that the effort should be nonpartisan. You can't separate and treat our people on the basis of how they look or who they voted for in addressing these measures, because we all are involved and we are heavily integrated, and therefore what affects one person can affect the others. So I'll end there. I can because a lot of questions are coming in, but some of them don't relate to the issues that we're discussing here today. And then maybe the others, the members of the media, can contact me directly for any clarification on any of the matters that I've raised here. As I said before, we will make available public the proposal that we presented to GCOM to ensure that this recount is done in a transparent way and that it doesn't last more than 2 weeks. And therefore, thank you very much.